So this pandemic has heightened some issues, unfairness really, in the allocation of tasks within many families. A lot of people, of course, have seen their childcare, their school services ended, and that's imposed more work on the parents, keeping an eye on the young ones. The burden in many cases has fallen disproportionately on women. Many, of course, of these women have careers outside the home. So their time, always in short supply, has been further squeezed. We're joined now by Eve Rodsky. She's a lawyer. She's the author of a book called Fair Play and the founder of Philanthropy Advisory Group. Eve, thank you so much for coming on the show. Just to explain to the viewers, you've done an awful lot of work. Your book, Fair Play, is about dividing up tasks at home, the rules that should be adopted. Tell us why before we get into the pandemic, tell us why you wanted to write that book and what the message of Fair Play is.
Well, I actually wrote the book because of a text my husband sent me 8 years ago that said, "I'm surprised you didn't get blueberries." And at the time, I was so overwhelmed that I used to be able to manage employee teams, that at that time I couldn't even manage a grocery list. And so I went down 8 years of research trying to understand why it is that women are holding 2/3 or more of what it takes to run a home and family. And it's only getting worse now in the pandemic, where a recent study in Canada showed that even though women make up half of your workforce, they are losing jobs at a disproportionate rate due to what's happening in the COVID crisis.
So, I mean, my impression obviously is that my kids are teens now. They're pretty well self-directed, but certainly people with younger kids, the childcare ended, the school ended, there were bigger parental responsibilities, and women ended up, as usual, taking on most of the burden.
Absolutely. I call that the dirty dozen. Typically, the tasks that are the hardest right now, homeschooling. Unfortunately, the statistics have showed that women have taken on homeschooling at a rate of 2 times the amount of men. We also have cleaning, dishes, all the things in the home that are repetitive. Often women will step up and do those tasks. And so what Fair Play is about is it's definitely not a man-bashing book, but for cisgender relationships, it's based on the premise that it's time to treat our home as our most important organization. Up until now, even my Aunt Marion's Mahjong group has more clearly defined expectations in the home. If you don't bring snack to that group twice, you're out. But at the home, we're all deciding who's setting the table when we're hangry and we're tired. We're all saying who's next to cook dinner. We're not customizing our defaults. We're often very, very disorganized in the home, but we bring systems and organization to work. And so my thesis is that when you bring those same systems and organization to work that you do in the workplace to home, everything changes. And that's what my data shows.
I like this just on organizing tasks. Okay, sometimes my wife, when she cooks dinner, she likes to have help. She likes me to cut things, to do mundane tasks. When I cook dinner, usually will just do it myself. You think that my approach is better? If you're doing a task, just do it yourself. Don't ask for help.
Fair Play is ultimately based on ownership. I call it the life-changing magic of mustard. Somebody in your house has to know how the mustard got there. In organizational management, we call that conception. Somebody has to monitor the mustard when it's running low and put it on a grocery list with everything else you need for the week. That in organizational management is what we call planning. And then someone has to get their butt to the store to buy the mustard, now in gloves and a mask. And that's what we call execution. And what I found in my research of over 500 couples, including Canadian couples, was that that's where men were stepping in at the execution. And then you guys are bringing home spicy Dijon every time, and I ask for French's yellow. And all of a sudden, we're arguing not about mustard anymore, but you and I are arguing about accountability and trust. So absolutely, your approach is the better approach. It's actually the entire premise of Fair Play is that do not focus on 50-50, focus on ownership. And she should allow you and you should allow her to finish your tasks from conception to planning to execution, from start to finish.
So essentially, keeping the grocery stocked, you think should be just one person's job?
Absolutely. You can always retrade those tasks because a lot of what's happening is we're not communicating about domestic life. A lot of people in my research told me that they practice meditation, they practice exercise, but we don't consider communication a practice. When you can sit down for 10 minutes a night with your partner, 10 minutes a night to check in about what's happening the next day, it is life-changing. And that's what my research shows. But oftentimes we're not taking the time to say, look, you can set a timer if it feels triggering to sit down and look at your partner in the eye. But when you can sit down and say, you hold the groceries card this week, or for Seth and me, this week he holds all of the camp card. So my kids are in a small little quarantine camp. So he's responsible for taking them to camp, for picking them up. That's his week. Next week will change.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Now, obviously, kids are going back to school in our part of the world here in Ontario in the fall. Of course, there's many a slip. Maybe things will, plans will change. So that's going to ease the pressure a bit, though, where kids are going back to school, presumably.
I think it will, but what I'm hoping is that the changes that, especially inviting men into the home, you have to remember that for Canada, for the US, this is the first time in modern history since the Industrial Revolution where our home, our school, and our workplace has often been under one roof. So we are going through a very, very new, very, very different time in our history. And I do hope that changes, the invisible work. So many men have said to me that the invisible work is now visible and that they can't unsee it. And so I really think that this is my love letter to men, because I believe that these are going to lead to big, big changes in how we handle all that invisible work in the home that has to get done, but nobody wants to get it done. I call it the daily grinds of life. They are repetitive. They're not fun to do, but we all have to get them done. And if they don't all fall on women, then I believe that not only will marriages be better, but I think we'll have some real beautiful strides in gender equity.
I like it. I like it, yeah. Time for us guys to step up and let the ladies lie back, maybe with a glass of wine more often. Eve, thank you very much indeed for joining us.